Okay. Let's get ready to rumble. Okay, got our audio. We happy with all that? Looks pretty good. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we're going to recreate another painting by another one of my favorite artists. Today we're going to be looking at, once again, the work of Henri Matisse. Today is day 5 of Matisse week. It's Matisse is definitely my top 5 favorite artists of all time, so it's been really fun spending the time with this greatest of great masters of art. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be trying to reproduce this very famous Matisse painting, or it's a paint, I guess it's a challenges the idea of what painting is, because it's a collage or decoupage, and we're going to do 2 versions of it. I'm going to do one with just regular paint on canvas, and I'm going to do another with cut out paper. So I'll show you 2 different techniques on how to do that. And let's get started here. This is going to be a really fun one here. It's also our bonus. We don't usually film on Saturdays, so it's kind of fun for me to do something a little bit out of the ordinary here. So let's just take a look at let's look at the plan of attack here of how we're going to accomplish all of this today. So we're going to begin with showing you how to get an image onto the canvas. That's the first thing, and so that we have some idea of what we're going to paint. And then we're going to do the Imprimatura, which is the preparation, the first layer of paint. So we're going to apply some color onto the canvas. And then while that's drying, we're going to talk a little bit about Henri Matisse. Now, we've explored his biography in a lot of depth already so far. Today's painting happened right near the very end of Henri Matisse's life, so that's kind of where we'll wrap things up, as this is the final day of our Matisse week. And then we'll probably, today's painting is a little bit different than maybe some of the other ones we've done. So some of this, these steps in the middle, there might be a little bit different as we go here. Of course, we'll get our finishing touches in right about like 20 minutes before we're done, and then at the very end we'll have our side-by-side comparison so that we can see how I did compared to the original. If you want to support the channel, here's a couple of ways: just liking and subscribing to to the channel, hitting the notification bell. Like today, I was a little bit off on the time I wanted to come in, because I was attending a rally to support freedom in Ukraine. I am Canadian Ukrainian, so it's something that's important to me. If you want to support my channel, there is a couple of ways that you can donate as little as $1. You know, via PayPal. There's the YouTube Super Chat function. If you see a little $ underneath where you comment, that means you can send money directly. And then there's e-transfers, or sending a good old check in the mail. And just contact me before you send it somewhere, because I usually teach at Emily Carr University. I'm off this semester, so if you start sending mail there, I won't get it. Okay, so let's talk about how to get an image onto the canvas here. So there is this image. This is the original. But I have done a tracing of it that you can use. I did this tracing on my iPad Pro using the Procreate app, and then I just exported it here, and I'll show you where you can download it for free. Maybe while I'm here looking at the website, or this is the Facebook, not my website, this is the Facebook group that I'm going to encourage you to upload your version of today's painting to maybe another artwork that you're working on, because once a month, in this case in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be going through the Facebook page, downloading all of your images, organizing them, and then celebrating them all and giving people feedback on their artwork in order to make them even better, because that's what it's all about, right? We all want to learn and we want to grow. So to find the outline that I mentioned just a few moments ago, you'll see there's a Dropbox link in the description below. And when you open up that Dropbox folder, you'll see there's like, what, 141 files in here. A lot of these are all paintings that we've already done. So you can watch each one of these episodes, download, and in some of these folders, there's like today's, right here, you will see lots of files, right? So there's more than 150 paintings. There's probably about 300 of them in here. And inside here, you're going to see all the paintings that we've done for Henri Matisse week, except for the other one that we did yesterday, which was a little bit more complex. And just as a little bit of reminder, all of the easiest paintings are at the top of the folder, and all the more complex ones are at the bottom. So the other Matisse one that we did just yesterday, the green stripe or the green line, depending on how you translate it, this one was, you know, maybe depending on how you think of it, I don't know how complicated it was, but I did not include it with this because maybe some beginners would find it a little too challenging. Anyway, let's go in here, and you'll see that these are the files that we're going to be working with today. So you have the outline in JPEG and PDF and the original. Again, feel free to download them and print them out if you want, even including this one, right? Okay, so once you've got your outline downloaded, you can print it out, and I'll show you what you can do with it once you've got it printed. So I'm going to play a video and talk over top of it. So you'll see that I'm going to be doing this on two 9x12 size canvases. So I'm going to be doing two paintings, each on a 9x12 size canvas. There's the outline I printed on my inkjet printer here at home. Nothing particularly special about it. And I'm just going to tape it down, trying roughly to get it into the center. I used to use a ruler to try to get it perfect, and then I realized it was just never going to be perfect. Perfection's the enemy of art, so you get it taped down as best as you can, and then I'm going to use some of this carbon transfer paper. And always make sure that you're putting the shiny side down, because the shiny side's got the pigment to transfer onto your canvas. So then I'm just going to use a pen here. I used to use a pencil all the time, but your pen works just fine. Maybe it gives you a little bit more narrow lines. And this is pretty self-explanatory, so let's just zip around here. What is left to do? Boom, there we go. Okay. So then you can recycle your outline if you like, or you can keep it and use it again for a different one, which is what I am going to do in just a few moments, right? So, stop that. So this is what we get. All right, we've got our outline, and I'm going to show you what I want to do with this here in just a few moments. So now I can use this for one of the paintings that I'm going to do. Let's get the other one set up, because I want to show you a different way of doing this here. Now this is what I want to use. We did this the other day, but I know not everyone watches every episode. So what you can see here, this is a watercolor tablet. Right, we've got watercolor paper in here. This is 11 by 15. It's bigger than what we need, but that's totally fine. And you know, we've got all of these pages in here, and it's a nice thick paper that works perfectly for our process, because we're going to paint on it, and we want it to absorb but not warp too much. Now it's going to warp, but ideally not too much. Now what I want to do is, I've done this outline already. I'm actually going to flip it backwards on here. Now I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see can you see some of the texture? I'm not sure that's visible, but anyway, I can see can you see how it's embossed on there? There's from the pen or pencil I used on the other side here, my first version of the tracing. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to trace it again onto this surface. Now, I'm just going to trace the blue figure here, so I can move my paper over. Oh, I just noticed the foot is in there. You know what? So it looks like I'm going to need this whole piece of paper. So It's a good idea just to measure twice, cut once, as they say. I used to be a carpenter, and just before you start cutting, you just want to make sure you've got enough space all the way around. Okay, so I'm going to do this again with my carbon paper. Let's put this under here. Okay. So, let's get my watercolor paper out of the way. You could try using photocopy paper for this, but my fear is that the results would be less than desirable, because the paper would wrinkle and warp to such an extent that when it's all said and done, you might be very disappointed. So this is a little bit kind of tricky trying to do this because I don't have my big dark black lines. I kind of just have the embossed shape, but it looks like I can do okay. I just sometimes have to give myself a little bit of the shadow. It kind of helps that I've got light coming in right from the side here, so that's going to really make the texture more pronounced. Maybe let's see if I make the... We'll see if you can see that a bit better. Getting there. Matisse did 4 versions of this, and actually probably, to be honest, I bet you he did even more than that. Well, he actually, well, not only, that's just a fact. He did many of these trying to figure a way to make this work as best as possible. Is that how it actually looks? Okay, that's interesting. It's funny. I always find whenever I do these episodes, I learn so much about each one of these paintings. It's always a kind of a revelation, like, oh, that's the way it looks. That is so, like, that's the way it was made, you know? It's like watching finding out how the cheese or the sausage is made, right? Okay. I'll go like that, and boom! Now the reason why I'm doing it on the back side is I'm going to paint this side blue, and then I'll have this side which I can then cut out, and I won't have any lines on here to deal with. Okay. So we'll just quickly clean this up and put this away. I don't think I'll need that again, but you never know. Okay. So let's see. What we're going to do next is so there's Jean is saying good morning from Australia, and Heidi says hi Michael and everyone. Is there whitest outline in this painting? Whitest outline. I'm not sure I know what that means, Heidi. I don't know what whitest outline means. There's Paula and Pascal and Donna. Lots of people watching right now. That is so cool. So now I'm going to just take this. So this is another blank canvas. This is actually the brand that I like. I think it's just better than the other ones, so that's why I didn't recommend it. I haven't even told you what brand that is, because I find they warp a lot. So this is going to be perfect for this, because I'm going to be gluing things to it, and these canvases just tend to do much better when I get them wet. They curve and bend and warp much less. I'm just going to, since this is right out of the plastic, I haven't gessoed it or anything, which is fine because I'm just going to be gluing things on. I'm not really going to be painting, so I'm not really too worried about making it super smooth, right? But I do just want to give it a little bit softer. That way it just gives us more things for glue to stick to. Maybe I'm just going to mute this. Okay, and then what I like to do once I've got that sanded is I often just rub it against my leg, and you can see that's all the sand. Well, that's what the sandpaper took off, right? All that little powder. So if I was doing a lot of these, I go outside so that I'm not getting powder all over the air and in my lungs, right? So now that I've got 2 canvases and 2 outlines ready, let's start the whole process here. So I'm going to do them a little bit differently. Let's go up to here. Okay, so the next step here is the Imprimatura. We're going to prep the surfaces to get them ready for painting. So maybe just before we do that, just as a kind of a reminder of what the colors are that I'm going to be using throughout today's episode. This is the brand that I use, and these are the exact tubes of paint that I use. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm not asked to recommend them. These are just colors that over the past 20 years of teaching that seem to work really well, because they do everything. We've done 194 paint, more than that, because that's just the episodes we've done on painting, using just these colors, not extra browns and greens and oranges or whatever else. Everything's done with these colors. Now, you don't have to use that brand, because here's other brands that also work. Golden, you can just pause and take a screenshot of these if you like. Here's Liquitex. Golden and Liquitex might be the 2 biggest ones. Maybe Winsor and Newton. Artist Loft. This is the Michael's Art Supply chain. That's their brand. Buzz, Peebo, Holbein, and Daler-Rowney. Okay, so those are the colors that we use to do the Imprimatura process. So let's actually do this process. What I usually do, typically for every painting, is I apply a warm yellow coat of paint, and I'm going to do just that once again. And what's going to be kind of interesting is we're going to do the 2 final paintings are going to have slightly different color, because I'm only going to do this yellow. I'm going to do it on both canvases to get started. Should I? I'm just thinking about a time-saving. No, let's do this, because I want to stay consistent here, Michael. Stay consistent. I was just thinking about maybe mixing a slightly different color here to get started, but I started thinking maybe that, especially because now that there's many people have already prepped their canvases, and I've switched things up a few times, and then people in horror start saying in the chat, "Oh no, I got mine all yellowed and ready, and now you're doing something different. What do I do?" So you could, if you really wanted, you could probably skip this step and then in about 8 minutes see what the next step is. So you could also just go and have a little snack, make yourself some tea. Now by that time we'll be moving on to the next step. Okay, so now I've got this yellow that I've pre-mixed here. Those of you that have been painting along with me for years know that this is what I do to almost every single painting, except some of those ones that I didn't do this step to. So those are the rare ones. I mean to kind of one day go through them all, and then I want to make like a spreadsheet that kind of I can share with people, and it's like so that people, I can, even just when I'm talking about it, I can look and see like, oh, which are the ones that I didn't do this with at the very beginning. Because I definitely, when we first began, I did not do this. And then it sort of organically happened. And that's one of the things I love about art, is it reminds me that, you know, you can only sort of think through a problem so much, and then at some point you just have to start taking action, and you just have to start doing it, and then when you start doing it, the solution forms. And it can sort of, for me sometimes it's a little unsatisfying. You're like, oh, I wish I thought of that at the very beginning, and right? But I would probably, if I had just sat in a chair just trying to think, laying on the couch about the best way to approach things, I'd still be sitting on the couch trying to think about the best way to do things, and nothing would have occurred, right? So I also just love doing this. Like, there's something really nice when you're starting a painting of just obliterating that white surface that just sort of looks blankly at you, just taunting you. Ah, pretty scary. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Ah, you're afraid to paint me, aren't you? Uh-huh, you can't do it. You don't got what it takes to make this painting. And then boom, you just throw this nice golden yellow over top of it. There you go. There you go. The other one's actually got a little bit richer of a yellow, just because there was probably a little bit more pigment that was less diluted on my brush when I just started painting it, since I just mixed that color. Which is fair, since that's the one that I'm going to be painting on, but both of them I'm going to use the same sort of next step, so it's probably going to be negated here very shortly. Oh, Heidi says there seems to be a whitish outline in the blue nude, but it's not clear on the screen. Interesting. Let's take a look here. You mean sort of around the figure? Or do you mean this white outline around the edge? Because I'm going to do that was one of my final steps. I'm going to use some tape to do that. If that's what you're meaning. You could certainly just avoid that too. It's totally up to you guys how you want to approach things. I'm just going to show you sort of a way that, or a couple of ways that I think will work for me. But what's kind of fun about, you know, someone like Heidi, who's been painting with me for a long time, is that, you know, you're experienced enough to start kind of formulating your own plan for how you want to attack a painting. And obviously, someone like Heidi, I just realized I forgot my other the newer blow dryer upstairs. Let's see if I can make this work here. So I'm just going to kind of help jumpstart the drawing process here, because I want to put another coat of paint, a little bit of an eggshell white over top of this. So I'm going to... Okay. So that does work. It's still a little wet on both sides, but that's okay. So let's just create another color here that's going to match the background of this painting. So what I want to try to do is mix this color, this kind of tan beige color here. So, oops, let's just come back. I'm going to put some color on my palette here so that I can mix that color, because I'm going to need a few colors to do that. Just trying to think out loud. So what is Matisse doing here? Let me just, before I do this, just what colors do we have here? So, oops. This is a cool blue, that's for sure. It's like cyan. It's very close to the blue that we're using as our cool blue. So this background color, let's use some of our color picking tools here, because we don't have a lot of color in this painting, so maybe it's worth just seeing if we can get it as right as possible. So where's my couple of resources here? So let's see. Where's my Dropbox? There we go. So I'm just looking for my file. Let's upload it directly here. And there we go. So I can upload this onto this website. And then it's going to share with me this hex code here. And this is a code that printers and digital artists use, right? Because this is the exact color that we see. So what I'm doing here is I'm using this other website, and these are both linked in the description, I think right below the Dropbox folder. So just so we can get a closer idea of what exactly the color is we're using here. So what we see is that obviously this is some sort of a brown, but it's like, what brown is it? This tells me that it's probably a cooler blue, like here, or a cooler blue that's been added to it, and it's very muted, right? As opposed to, there's other browns that we can get, right? Like this would be a much warmer brown, right? Here's a pretty warm brown. And then as we start going over into the greens, we start getting a much cooler greenish brown, right? And that also kind of swings us, like, so for instance, this blue, or this right here, we have, because we have warmer reds here and warmer oranges and then cooler yellows, right? So let's put this code back in there, right? So moving towards here, much colder blue. So that helps. I think we're gonna, so what we'll do is we'll make a cooler blue or cooler brown for this painting. And maybe just while we're right here, let's just take a look and confirm what this cyan is. Right, we can just move around here. I'm just looking down here and seeing that there's not much change, right? That's pretty good. Because, you know, I could be accidentally sampling one little tiny area of the painting that is very different, right? So again, this tells me this is a very cool blue, because we don't have to go too much more before we start getting into these turquoise colors, right? Here's a much, this is all warm blue in here, where you can see we're supposed to get purple, but that's not what we had. Our color is somewhere, where is it? Somewhere in here. Let's bring it back. Right, that's the color. Right, you can also see, if you want, we can give it a little bit of modification with a little bit of orange on the other side. Right, but anyway, let's mix our cool brown for the background. So I think for this painting, mostly what we're going to be using going forward are cooler colors. So I'm using my cool yellow, my... Oh, it is open. Cool blue. And my magenta, my cool red. And then some white. And we'll see how things develop from there. So what I want to do to get this color is I want to first mix a brown, and let's start with a pretty small brush because we aren't going to need much to tint. All right, so let's take a bit of yellow. We'll make a slightly bigger batch. Yeah, okay. So take some yellow. Let's take some cool red. Mix that together. A bit more yellow. Right, the more yellow in there, the lighter this color will be. The more blue we have in there, the more darker. Ooh, see, I put way too much. Ah, I can see how green that is. That. Okay, let's start that again. Because if I try to modify this, it's going to drive me absolutely bonkers. So let's take some yellow, a little bit of red. In fact, let's keep that to the side. Just a little bit of blue. So we get a color like this. Okay. Now let's take, I'm going to do it somewhere. Let's do it right in here. So let's take a lot of white, maybe not all of it just yet. We'll see. And look at this. We're getting close. Oh, I gotta get my light. Okay. So that's, I'm getting close, but I think I want to add a lot more white. Now that I look at how it's mixing, I'm going to put even more on here. Because I forgot that I got 2 paintings to cover here. Okay, I feel like I gotta make a little bit more of this. So that's pretty good. It's a little bit lighter, But I'm also going to put a little bit of matte medium in here in a second, which is going to make it thinner, right? So and there's going to be yellow coming in from below. So maybe I'm just going to take a bit more of this red. Okay. So again, the color's not exactly right now because I'm going to paint it over this warm yellow. So here's what I'm going to use is the matte medium, right? Matte medium is just paint that's clear. It has no pigment in it. I just put a lot on there. I guess that's okay. Maybe we'll see. It's always easier to do this, the thinner coat, and then make it thicker later, or do a second coat if you're not happy with it. Okay. So let's move that out of the way. Let's do it on this one here. Okay, so I'm just going to take this. I think that's pretty good. I'm just going to leave it like that. Nice and quick, short and sweet. I am going to paint white around the edges with tape later on, so let's let that dry off to the side. Do I have enough to get it through this painting? I'm going to put a little bit of more matte medium in here just to see if I can stretch this paint out as much as possible. Also, because I got those pencil lines in there, I want to see if I can make sure they're visible as much as possible. Okay, let's take a big goop of this. It looks like it was good of me to put that extra little bit of matte medium in there to thin it out a little bit. There's a bit of warm yellow that wasn't dry, obviously, on the side of the canvas, so not sure how clear it is, but I can still see the image through there, which is really exciting because that's all I need, right? And I'm just gonna go over. I think that's good. Okay. Whoa, lots of messages here. Let me just, I was just seeing in the chat there, Heidi saying, I only caught this episode by chance as I've never received notifications. I've sketched and painted mine in cool blue, but I just saw the one on the Pompidou Center website in ultra blue. Maybe ultramarine blue? Is that what you're saying? I mean, it could be just the way that it's been photographed. I mean, I do think this is probably, you know, maybe there's maybe a cobalt kind of quality in here, which is a bit more warmer, so that could help. You know, sometimes we've all seen, well, maybe I've seen, like, for instance, even, let's look at these two. Right, here's the official book from the Museum of Modern Art, and this definitely does have a bit of a warmer color to it. It definitely has a little bit closer to ultramarine blue. Again, I think still kind of a cooler blue, not quite super, you know, like not quite ultramarine blue. That's why I say it's maybe in between. So when we get there, we'll tackle that. In fact, actually, maybe we should get this other blue going here so it can dry a little bit while we're chatting. Good idea. This is why I love working here in public, and where's people sort of talking. It gets me thinking a little bit, thinking about things I might not have just instinctually come up with on my own. So let's move. Where am I going to put this? Here. Put that down there. And let's just, I'm going to wipe all of this away. I want that to be as dry as possible. And the fact that it's still kind of wet makes me think instead I'm going to put some paper down to cover this. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix a blue just like this image, and then we're going to paint it on this side. We'll let it dry, and then we'll just talk briefly about Matisse and this painting and some of his latter work, or later work. Okay, so actually, let's mix that color. We'll put this down just because we want to ensure that we don't get any paint. Oh, it doesn't matter, does it? Sorry, again, sometimes it takes me a second to think through all of this. So that color, what do we want to do with this color? We're going to need some more blue, or white, I mean. Got to use my torture device. So I think what Paul is talking about is that notification bell. I can't remember where it is. I think it's kind of right near the like button or subscribe. It's right near the subscribe button. And if you hit that, that helps. And it also depends on your notification settings. I think it's set to default to like really only do anything if you're actually logged into YouTube, which is probably best for most people. I'm sure you can set it so it would send you an email or maybe a text message, or maybe somebody will show up at your door with flowers. I'm sure there's all sorts of different settings. Okay. I'm also going to use a little bit of warm blue, so I'm just going to put that here on my palette. I will say, if you're a beginner, you may want to just use, let's say, the cool blue or the ultramarine blue, whatever blue you want to use. I mean, you could use green or orange if you like. But I would suggest maybe at this point I'm going to mix a color, but you may want to consider just using a color right out of the tube. Because if you do encounter any problems, if you're a beginner trying to mix that same color again, while it is a very useful and important exercise that I would recommend, it may lead to a lot of frustration and a sense of like, it might discourage you. So using it right out of the tube may sort of be a good cautionary step for you. if you're a little bit afraid of your ability to mix paint. Okay, so let's see if how closely we can match the color here. Again, that is pretty close. That color, I mean, when I look at the screen, that is pretty close, but let's... In fact, I think I'm going to need more of this, so I'm just going to... Wow, those are just delicious sounds, hey? Anyone having eating some dinner or having breakfast while they're watching that? Nothing like a fart sound from a tube of paint. Real wet fart sound. Okay. What was I about to do here? I had something intelligent. Oh, okay. Yes. I don't know if it's intelligent. What I want to do is... I'm just going to make some marks for myself as to where the outline of this figure is, so that I don't have to paint too much here. Like, I don't know if you can see this, but I just holding this up so I can see through the light. Maybe you can see a little bit of that. I don't know, it's pretty thick paper, but I just sort of, that way I can be sure that when I turn this around, I've actually got everything painted and I'm not missing a big gap. Alright, and that's sort of where the hole actually is. That way, okay, now I know how much I need. I'm actually, I think I'll cut this down too. That way I don't ruin this paper. I can use it again and it can live to fight another day. Let's just do this here too. Okay, so that's much less room than okay. So this blue, let's get it back up on screen there. I'm going to take a little bit of my warm red. That seems like a lot, but considering I'm mixing it into this color, it's going to mostly be absorbed. Alright, so this gets us a little bit closer to a cobalt blue, which is that, I guess you could say, more of a neutral blue. I like that a lot. That's pretty close. It's maybe a little bit shiny and bright, but I think that's pretty close. Let's just make sure it's nicely mixed in here. I might have to mix this again to do the other part of the painting. Okay. Should we use a bigger brush to do this? Maybe let's... Yeah, I think so. So. Or just use this one here. Let's just use it. I just have to think through things. Okay. So I was going to put white in it, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. Although white would have made this a little bit more solid, maybe a little bit less streaky. The white of the paper, it kind of acts like a like white paint too. Always remember that. And just like the original, I want to try to get these horizontal lines going right through there too. So So you can see this paper is curling quite a lot. Probably would have been a good idea to maybe even put tape underneath there to help. I could do a second coat of this. Let's just see. That's okay. Now, in fact, let's just I'll keep this on the table like this, and you'll see that over the next few minutes, as it dries, the paper will kind of return relatively close to its original shape. Not completely, but you can see how curved it is right now. I mean, we're that far off the surface, so it's significantly curved. But maybe even I'm just going to wipe this down here. Especially because why did I got that paper out here? And then I thought, well, it's not going to be that dirty. Why didn't you use the paper? And then I realized now that's why you use the paper. Okay, so now I'm basically out of that blue, so I'm glad that I mixed more of it because I barely covered that surface as it is. So I'm going to have to do that again for the other painting. Just going to clean up my brushes while we're right here. So, I like, isn't that kind of cool that it's got the colors of Ukraine today? What a little nice coincidence there. Okay, so how about, while this dries, let's just take a little detour and talk about the biography. So let's now take a quick little break while everything is drying here on the table. Let's maybe move this back so you can see how that changes. And probably today, of course, it's going to actually warp even more and rather than go back to its original shape. That's just the way things are in the world these days, right? Okay. So we've talked about Matisse, born 1869, dies in 1954 in Nice at age 84. Right, and if you've never been to Nice, it's a beautiful city on the southern shore of the Côte d'Azur in France. It's sort of there's a lot of casinos there. I was gonna say it's like the Vegas of France, but it's like a lot of that French Riviera. It's got that Monte Carlo kind of quality. There's palm trees. It was also during this time that Matisse moved down to the south of France when the Germans invaded France and the Nazis occupied Paris and the northern part of France. So maybe let's just jump to this time here. So Matisse stays in France with his wife when the Nazis invade, although they end their marriage. Because Matisse was having a bit of an affair here. But he moves into this really beautiful building that's now the Matisse Museum, just outside of Nice, kind of like on this hilltop overlooking the city. Beautiful. If you should go down there and visit if you can. And one of the, so again, that southern part of France was part of what was called the Vichy regime, which was kind of like a puppet regime of the Nazis. And here's his quote: "It seemed to me as if I would be deserting if I moved somewhere else. If everyone who has any value leaves France, what remains of France?" One of his sons was also part of the French resistance as well. Not Pierre, but the other son. So he's living in the south of France. He was diagnosed with cancer, abdominal cancer, in 1941. So he basically is stuck in his bed or in a wheelchair for the remainder of his life. He can sometimes stand with a cane, and you see some images of him like that. But I think what's kind of cool is he gets this... let me see. I didn't upload photos of it. Let's scroll down here. One of the things that he does shortly before he makes today's painting, because we talked about the cutouts. So the cutouts we did, I think that was our first episode of Matisse Week. So we looked at all the cutouts he was doing from his bed in the early part of 1940, around like 43 to 47 is the kind of golden age of the cutouts. And then towards the end of the 40s, he gets commissioned from 1947 to 1951 to paint the interior of this tiny little chapel overlooking Nice, in this town called Vence. And beautiful. It's tiny. Like, you would drive by it and not even notice it was there. Like, if we did a Google Street View, you'd see that it's just this tiny little... This is what it looks like from the street, and then there's kind of like a cliffside on the other side. And there's a tiny little museum and the chapel itself. Is there some photos inside here we can look at? No photos. I've been there myself. Highly recommend anyone, if you're in that area, you've got to visit it. You've probably seen some of these images before because they're quite famous. So this is what it looks like. It's very simple. Like, some people would say these paintings are sacrilegious, that they're ugly and awful. I think they're super beautiful, and it's the culmination of Matisse's entire life, the entire way that he's thought about reducing people, flowers, fruits, landscapes, still lifes, everything down to their barest essential essence. And even here, this priest that's in his robes, it's very simplified, right? There's not even a face, right? It's this idea that anyone can you can project yourself into those roles. And then these beautiful stained glass windows, which cast these gorgeous colors throughout on the floor, which is highly reflective. It is really cool. Just beautiful. That's quite nice, all those colors on here. Oh, and the other thing too is he designed all of these garments for the priests and the people throughout the ceremonies. Let's see if there's... Oh, there's a picture of him sitting in the chapel. Let me see. Let's get a closer view. Right, I love these, right? So I think he might actually be in the chapel working on, or no, this is in his studio in Vence, which is now the Matisse Museum. And you see him drawing these paintings with this gigantic stick. It won't let me enlarge that. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger text, but again, not only he's dying of abdominal cancer while he's making these. Here's the robes that the priests wear. Nowadays they actually wear reproductions rather than the originals, because the originals are probably worth $50-60 million each, right? So I wish I could blow that picture up. That's what I was looking at. Oh, this gives us a little bit of an idea of where. So here's Vence, and Nice is right there. And Cagnes-sur-Mer is also, by the way, this is where Renoir's studio is. So if you want to do a little studio tour, you can go visit the chapel here, the Matisse Chapel, Renoir's studio, and then the Matisse Museum. There it is, right there. Anyway, it gives you a little background of some of this. So this is one of the very final things that Matisse makes. You know, he dies in 1954. Today's artwork was done in 1952. And as I said, he did a whole number of versions of this. And the image itself looks really simple, right? But we have to remember he spent a long time piecing, and he had his assistants helping him move paper around. He's cutting different shapes for legs, putting him into position, cutting different shapes of the arm. So what we see is actually, let's see if we can look at this one a little bit closer. That there's separate pieces. This actually, now that I look at this one, it's almost one continuous set of paper. Ah, interesting. So some of the other ones as part of this series are very clearly many different pieces of paper. In fact, let's I gotta wait. I'm trying to kill a little bit of time here with some of these things drying too. So okay, here we go. Here it gives us an idea of some of the different iterations. Actually, I have a book right here showing all this, but it maybe doesn't come, it's not quite maybe as clear. The other thing too is some of them he actually painted, right? So here's another one where he drew all of these shapes on here, and then you can see this, I think, probably most clearly. Oops, well, let me get any bigger. Of all, in fact, let's see. Okay, so here we go. You can see this one. Look at all of the pencil marks on there, and then he's cutting paper to try to fit into these places. And look how many little different cuts and pieces of paper are in this one. So this is clearly one of the earlier stages of this process. Look at all the different overlapping pieces of paper. It's really remarkable. Like, that's gorgeous. Now, obviously, this one would be a little bit more complex for us to do, especially as kind of a bonus episode for beginners. So that's why I chose this one instead, because it's much more simplified. Okay, that's looking pretty close to being ready to cut. Let's just take a look at our backgrounds. That's about ready. Now we're going to cut the paper out onto this surface. Let's see here. I guess we'll just, I'll call this our foreground pass for the other painting, because we can probably just start painting right. Oh, well, that's actually a little bit wet. That's still a bit wet. So maybe we'll come back to that. So let's basically, we're going to be doing the foreground cutout of this. So let's do just that. One advantage to, if you used a sheet of paper and didn't cut it out, then you'd actually have a bunch of leftover shapes that you could use if, let's say, for instance, something happened here where one of the shapes got lost or wrecked. You could just cut a brand new shape for it. Interesting. Now that I see how this is constructed, I always find it so fascinating. Now that I'm working on this, you can really see how it all fit together as one thing. And once he got it cut out, he obviously just moved those pieces a little bit to the side. to create little gaps in between the body and, let's say, the arm right here. Like, so in the original, these were just right attached to this here. I wonder if he did this too, if he drew on the other side. I'd be fascinated now to know if on the other side of this piece of paper, if we would find a whole bunch of pencil marks just like I did here. Let's look at the, before I just cut this into two pieces, just wanted to look here where that arm goes. Yeah, it gets totally cut right off, so. So we have that. I'm curious if anyone has actually been to the Matisse Chapel in Vence before. Anyone who's watching me, if that's a place you visited. It's surprisingly not that big of a tourist attraction. When I went, I think there was just one other person. And I was there in, like, when would I, like, you know, in, it was like August? July? I'm trying to, I can't remember now. This was a long time ago. Probably 20 years ago, maybe? No. 2006, I think I was there. 15 years ago. My goodness. So maybe it's a tourist bonanza these days. Right, I love these little strips, right? And you can see now that these kind of striations in here, how well that works. It's pretty cool. If you see, there's the pictures of him laying in bed doing this, he's got some gigantic, big Edward Scissorhands scissors that are, are pretty big. And, oh, I just realized, I think this arm was actually attached. But got one. Right, in fact, I'll just take a blank canvas and put this down here so we can start to see this evolving. I think we're like that. Where is it? So this is the foot down here, I think. Got a bunch more to cut out, but I think I can cut this off. Oh, goodness, that's scary. Just as I turned the... Where on earth does that go? Is this not part of it? Is that just a little bit of extra? Before I cut it off, I want to make sure, absolutely sure I don't... It doesn't look like... Okay, I think that just comes off there, right? So this little area is interesting. I wonder what he was thinking about here. Oh, that's the thigh on the other side. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have cut that quite so. Now I see. Interesting. I mean, we could. I've got extra paper. I could, quote unquote, fix it if I want to. Okay, so that what I'm talking about is this area right here. I don't know why I did that so small, but I could take... I guess I might not have a piece of... I want the stripes going the other way, don't I? This is why it would have been beneficial to have kept more of it, but... Or maybe I could... take... a little bit of... Let's just see. Is it worth it? Is my... maybe instead of enlarging that, just to do this bigger. Pretty limited with what I can do here if I do in fact want to do anything. Maybe I could just put it underneath and glue it in there. I think that is going to work. A little bit lower down there. Maybe I'll just keep it like that. But instead, actually, I'll tuck it in behind there. Okay. So, I've got all my pieces cut out, right? Just want to make sure I haven't missing anything. I'll just put all that paper to the side. Wow. Lots of comments here. Tanya says, Michael, do you have a favorite Ukrainian artist? Probably Sonia Delaunay. We talked about her just a few weeks ago. She was definitely amongst my favorite. I was planning. I actually got about 24 books on Ukrainian art out from the library, and I've done a ton of research. And at one point, I do want to do a whole series of maybe 5 or 6 episodes dedicated to Ukrainian artists. And as things in the world have been evolving, I was like, oh, maybe let's just flip and we'll put that in right now. And the amount of work that it takes to do all of that and get that ready, I was just like, you know what, I've already got another 30 episodes all prepped and ready to go. Let's just, one might hope that all of this trouble in the world right now is gone, and but probably, you know, the issues with Ukraine and Russia have been going on for 500 years. I don't think in the next couple of months it's going to hurt if I do that later. I think we'll still have a lot to talk about. Not that anybody was saying that I needed to, but Pascal says, I'm thinking of doing a tour in 2023. I've seen a little bit of Versailles and Orsay, the Louvre before I got into it. Tony says, the Louvre is definitely on my bucket list. Yes. One thing I would say, if you go to the Louvre, you should probably have and there's part of me, you know, it would be great if everybody went there and spent 3 days going there. It's always very busy. You should got to go early in the morning to avoid some of the crowds. And it'd be great, yeah, if everyone spent, because it's so big that you could run through the Louvre and after 4 or 5 hours still not go into every room. I'm not kidding. It's a big place, right? So I think it's one of those things you have to kind of set some limits to yourself. Otherwise, you just get exhausted. And if you're really exhausted going through a museum, it's not a really fun experience, right? You're sort of like, feels like homework. No one wants to be. I think when you're looking at art, you should feel open and receptive and not like exhausted and closed, right? So I would sort of just get a book. There's thousands of books on the Louvre, and sort of look, and they've done a pretty good job of spreading out their most famous artworks, which makes it a little bit, because then you got to do some trekking back and forth to get to those places, but it does help avoid massive crowds in one place. Like, for instance, the Mona Lisa always has a gigantic crowd, and you're kind of pushed to the front. You get maybe 5 seconds there, and then you're pushed out of the way for the more people coming through. So while I think it's worth experiencing that part of the Louvre and getting and just seeing the spectacle of the Mona Lisa, I think, is because you can't actually really see it. It's behind bulletproof glass. There's a big fence. There's soldiers. I mean, it's just like, it's ridiculous. But I love how ridiculous that is. I think it's fantastic. So you just have to experience for once in your life that absurdity. But then, you know, think about some other artworks, paintings, whether it's you could spend all day in the Egyptian area, you could spend all day looking at the furniture and the clothing. So, you know, picking a few things off and just saying, okay, I'm going to try to get to these 5 things. If I get to those 5 things in like 3 hours, then I'm going to go have a baguette with cheese and, you know, brie on a cafe, and just write down a little bit about what I saw. That would be, I think, a good experience rather than trying to see it all. Wow, the ridiculous detour there. Oh, like Pascal says, the Louvre is huge. I've only seen one wing. I need more time. Lots of time. Yeah, a month in France should suffice this, Tanya. Yeah. Yeah. Why? You know, you guys talking about spending a month in France. That's what I did when I was maybe 25 years old. I had an exhibition, and I sold all the paintings from the exhibition. And what I did is I bought a plane ticket to France. I had a list of all the artists' studios that I wanted to visit, and I just spent the entire month just being by myself, going around France, going and visiting the graves of Van Gogh, visiting the grave of Matisse. Picasso's grave is in a castle that you can't get to, you know, and going to the studios of, like, we looked at Gustave Moreau's in Paris the other day because he was a teacher of Matisse Museum in Nice, the Picasso Museum in Paris, so on and so forth. That was an incredible experience. I somehow got yellow on a few places here, which makes me want to just do a tiny little touch-up. I'm not sure. I guess there was just some yellow paint on the table or something. Let's move that out of the way. See, this is why I wanted to have a cleaner table. So, just to try to catch these things before they get too far out of hand, I'm just going to take a little bit of paint, and let's just watch how I'm going to touch these up. And I might do this even after it dries as well. I'm going to try to get it in line with the previous paint, just to make it as invisible as possible. How did this happen? I must have had maybe some yellow on my fingers or something while I was cutting. That is weird. My fingers are kind of dirty, so... Okay, that's good. And that foot there. One of the things is I'm noticing that as this watercolor paper dries, it's really flattening out, especially now that I cut the shapes out. You know, it's the major warping has stopped and it's kind of gone back to its flat shape, which is the benefit of watercolor paper. Often when it's absorbing the water, it starts to curl and bend, but as it dries, it kind of returns. Whereas if you use like photocopy paper, it just falls apart, or just not only causes wrinkles, that the paper actually expands in ways that will just never flatten out. If you try to flatten it, you're going to get some creases onto it. Okay, so how about let's do let's do the foreground pass on this other artwork, the other one here that we've painted. I'm actually just going to paint it, and then we'll use blue paint. Although I'm just realizing there's these legs come out over the edge. So instead, let's do a little bit of tape. And the way that I'm going to do this, because I'm going to paint these edges white around here, I'm going to put this tape down. I'm actually going to go a little bit inside the line, because if this is going to go white, then I want to make sure I actually get rid of that line entirely, right? Alright, so the white's going to cover up some on my line. And if you've got like tape, you can actually kind of shift it and kind of bend it. It's going to create some little wrinkles in here. Again, leaving that little bit of an edge. Not ideal. Be nice if there was one long piece, but let's see if we can try to match it up there. Why do I do this to myself? That's going to be a little funky in there, but I think the original is pretty funky too. So let me just to make me feel better. Yeah, it's not perfectly. I didn't want perfectly straight lines, so that's okay. I do look at this, and I've got a lot of extra room at the top that I don't have at the bottom. Might look a little bit weird now that I do that, but we'll just say that that's how Matisse did it. So I am almost compelled to do this without any of the matte medium, and just to do this real fast, quick and dirty way, just to keep things moving. I think you've seen me do the taping many times, and often I use matte medium to help get a nice sharp line. Should I do that again, or should I just wing it and try to do it with the white and just let's just do it with the white. Let's oops, let's see. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. So, let's take a chance, eh? So I'm going to take my white. I'm going to paint just pure white on here. And get a brush. I just want to make sure that this is well burnished. If I'm not going to use matte medium, I want to make sure that at least this tape is creating as impermeable of a barrier there as possible. Okay, so let's take some of this white. Okay, and I'm going to brush away from the edges here. Since this is a relatively straightforward, simple painting, this should go pretty easily. The way that I'm painting it. think in the other painting, I'm going to move this whole rectangle up a little bit higher. Which is something I can do with art, right? I can move things around, make things bigger or smaller. That's the fun thing about art. Ah! This is the paint on my finger just came off. This area is going to be blue, but have to be careful about doing too much more here. I think I'll just use the opportunity to paint more of my color, which I still have there. Let me just I'm gonna blow dry this just really quickly, and then put another coat of white on there, a little bit thinner. Just it's gonna make for a nice, even. I mean, it's a little bit patchy in places, so. Actually, it just occurred to me that rather than blow drying this and just sitting here waiting for that to dry, I could put this tape on this and just get that ready. So I'm just doing two things here. How big should we make this? Maybe, actually, let me just show you what I'm doing here. So I just have this tape cut there. And I've taken this other piece of tape and just cut it on a bit of a diagonal. That way I don't have to worry about trimming anything. And I just get this as close to that corner as possible. And then I'll just go right across here. I guess mine's going to be a lot more straight than his. So let's just trim that straight across, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a little corner there. I got a little more space here, so let's just take this over. That's much better. Sorry. The foot covers that. So why am I... Okay, so that's... I'm just looking at the original, I go, doesn't even matter how clean that bottom right corner is, because the foot's going to go right over top of it. Maybe. I don't want to be too sloppy, but you never know, just based on the way that I start gluing things down. Maybe it doesn't, and I might need to... I don't know, there could be... You never know. So, let's get a little more white on here. And again, I'm just going to burnish I'm hoping that I get pretty clean lines. I'm expecting it to not to be perfect though. So but that's, you know, I always find, like, one of the things, I just like challenging my assumptions and just sort of think, well, this is the way I always do it. It usually works 90% if I do it that way, but why don't I just see? Maybe the tape, maybe there's great strides in tape technology lately. And so let's see if some of these tapes claim to be able to get perfectly straight lines right off the bat. So let's see. I think this might even be the specific. Is this the Scotch? One of these, I can't remember. Is it the frog tape that claims to be perfect, get perfect straight lines? Let's speed this up. Brushed against the tape up there. We'll see if that's where it's gonna all fall apart. Okay, let's leave this to dry. While that's drying, let's just come back. Look how we got another one. Oh, I was gonna say, I thought I got another mark on there. Oh my goodness, it looks like it was okay, but. That one's still wet, so let's peel the tape off of this one rather than blow drying and just see if our effects turn out. So let's look at how I like using this other view. Where should we start? Some pretty good lines so far. Maybe let's... Oh. That's weird. What happened there? Huh. Pulled up, so that must have meant some of that paint was not quite dry. Let's see, where is this? There's that. I was fighting with that little area there. Whoa, it's some little funny bunnies are kind of popping up here. So what are these little... I think I'm gonna let those dry, unless I can. I'm not sure what's causing these here. I think it's just, actually looks like just semi-dried paint flakes. Take care of those. Okay. And how did I do this? Huh. That was weird. There's a pencil line there. Huh. So I'm just going to take a small brush and just clean up this little area. Still got a little bit of this paint left over. Let's just tackle that. Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, again, you can see there's a big gap there. Or it's just wider at the top and the bottom, which is a little bit unusual. But I'm going to set this to dry for a few minutes. Let's do the tape on the other one, and then we'll come back to it. Okay. So we'll just put another layer of white paint just around these edges and peel the tape off. So, I mean, you know, if you're using this technique and you're pretty fast at it, you can do this without using the matte medium, which is, you know, a good reminder of that hey, you know, it's probably it helps to take some precautions, but I think sometimes, you know, if you put too heavy of matte medium, which I sometimes do, then you're actually gonna you have almost too much paint there, and it dries such a thick layer that when you peel it off, it tears that paint away. And I'm certainly guilty of having done that a few times. Okay, that's good. Let's take this paint, just tape off. Where's my knife? Okay. And I often pull kind of over top. I want to be careful about getting any of this paint onto the surface. Let's see, let's do the this side up here first. Come on. Look at that. Nice, beautiful, sharp edges. Oh, I love it. Okay. All of that just to create a little white border, but it's an essential part of this artwork, and trying to get it as, you know, right is helpful, right? That's what it's all about. Oops. This is an area where I got some of the tape. Made a sharp little mark on there again here too. Okay. Move that out of the way so that can dry while we finish this off. Let's that white paint. That's that. I thought I knew that was going to happen, so I'm not surprised. We're going to mix our blue. Should I try to do this? I could even use tape to do that, but all cleaned up and ready for the next step here. It looks a little bit wet. I'm just going to blow dry that just really quickly so that I can move on. So I'm just going to mute this for okay. So we're gonna mix our blue again, and then we're gonna paint. We're actually gonna paint this on here rather than using cut out paper to do it. So let's move this out of the way temporarily. Come back here. I'll use that. If I have to make more, I'll make more. So this is going to be a little bit different because now I'm painting this color onto that tan background as opposed to painting it onto the white paper here. So what might happen is that this blue might appear darker than the one that we did earlier. So I'm probably going to mix a little bit of white into this color just to help compensate for that slight change. So let's mix. I just took my cold blue, my cyan, and mixing it with a little bit of warm blue. Let's put a little bit more there. And just taking a little bit of white. I'm not going to use a lot, but just a little bit to help keep it a little bit more on the bright side so that when it gets on top of that tan color, it stays a little bit brighter. Again, you could skip that. You could, if you want. If you think maybe I'm wrong, go right ahead, and I think it'd be interesting to see, you know, depending on how dark your background actually appears, right? So there's probably, what would you say, maybe 5-to-1 cold blue to warm blue, cyan to ultramarine blue, and a little bit of white in here. And my hope is by the end, you know, like let's say if I paint this color on here right now, it looks a little bit less intense. Probably can't even see that. But it is tinted ever so slightly. It doesn't quite have quite as bright of a color because we put a little bit of that white in there. But I think all said and done, we would only really notice that if we had these two side by side, which we will do in here. You will see both of mine side by side, but probably if you're just doing one or the other, no one would notice the difference, and they would probably think you nailed the color bang on. This also, a little bit of white should also help reduce the amount of hopefully I won't have to do a second layer of paint because the white is going to cover up a little bit of the background color ever so slightly, right? Okay. Now with this, I'm not going to be able to get all the nice, you can barely see it, maybe more down here. I'm not really going to be able to get those nice stripes. I mean, I can try to paint left to right in order to try to get that to happen, but I'm not going to, you know, get too worked up about it. As you can see, it's still a little bit transparent. That's okay. Again, I could always do a second coat, and probably by the time I get all the way down to the bottom, some of this area up here will be dry. I just have to be a bit mindful that maybe some of the white around the edges is not fully dry. I think what I might do is paint this all this way, and then when I'm done, actually rotate the canvas and paint on it from the other side. That way, because right now the left side tends to be darker and then the right side gets lighter, just because being right-handed and painting on it that way. The next layer, if I do it backwards, then I'll get the right side will be darker. Although, you know, I kind of like the semi-transparent quality that I see there. I don't know, maybe there might be places I might not try to make it a big solid color. I could see myself leaving it like that. Now I'm going to go over to the knee here. That way I don't have to reach over top of the right side when it's drying. Those of you that are left-handed can just skip over that. You know, or you're probably doing it backwards, not backwards, but opposite of what I'm doing, which is fine. Just gonna move this. We'll get the bottom left corner all done. Very quiet chat all of a sudden. Everyone's painting away, I guess. That's cool. You know, it's like it's like a Thanksgiving dinner when all you can hear is people eating. That's a good sign. Usually, unless somebody has said something really offensive and everyone's like, oh. So sometimes after I do something like that, I'm just going to take my finger and kind of go, I want to make sure there's no paint on it, and just go up over these little ridges there to get rid of any major excess buildup of paint that I sometimes do when I'm painting. Okay. But so far I've done this whole painting with a relatively large brush, which I always find very satisfying painting. Kind of, I don't know why, small details with a small brush. Or small details with a larger brush, I mean. Oh, how did I get the wrong thing on the screen there? Oh my goodness, okay. Let's see. I'm kind of liking the way this is turning out. I might not do a second layer. I might do a little few touch-ups here and there. But I'm kind of at the moment leaning to keeping it kind of like this. You can let me know in the chat if you think, what you think I should do here. Tanya says, personally, I like the painterly quality. Yeah, there's definitely, we can see, you know, if I do another, like another layer or potentially even a third layer, what would happen is that the paint becomes really opaque and we don't see any color coming through, which, you know, makes it a little bit more like the paper, in that the paper, you know, is not, it's not like tracing paper, it's not semi-transparent, so we wouldn't expect to see any background there. But we did look at a few other ones that he did where you could see that he painted many different pieces of paper. He clearly drew all over them, and they got kind of messy, and so at the, oops, you can't really see what I'm doing down here. So where is this on camera? There we are. Part of, in the original, a little bit of the, he goes outside of this border, so maybe one just right here. Let's, I think the only places I might do a second layer are some of these smaller shapes where it's harder to get at the thicker mass tone in there. So I think I've taken a little bit of a detour right here. We'll see when I rotate it back the other way around. It kind of looks a little bit like a print now, actually, which is really strange. Okay, let's just take a look at this. Actually, no, just want to work on this while everything's kind of drying. This area is pretty dry because it was done so thin. Same with this area up here. Okay. So just some places where you see a little bit of some pencil lines. I don't know, I kind of like that. Lori says, based on the last painting we did of Matisse's, I don't think he would smooth it out. You think he would keep the kind of the little bit of the texture, or not texture, the unevenness, I guess, of the paint? I mean, I think there's, like, for instance, I actually really like the way it looks up here. That slight unevenness works really well. I think there's a few places in here where I think I'm less happy with it. So I might just do a couple of little touch-ups here. So, again, one of the things I think about with painting is I always want to make it look like everything was intentional. You know, if there was a mistake, I've left the mistake in because I think it works. Not because I don't know how to fix it, or I don't know what to do, or I got lazy. It's because I realized, that's something really cool that I've just made happen there. So, I'm always, you know, when I get close to finishing a painting, that's one of the things I think about. You know, I guess that would be like, how do I know when it's done? It's like when all of the mistakes, I can own all the mistakes. I can live with them. I can feel like, hey, actually, those are opportunities, not mistakes in the traditional sense. Now that I'm doing that, I guess I'm feeling better. I feel much better about down here now. I do start wondering, the more this gets filled in, though, will it make the top part look unfinished? Happy accidents. Yes, says Pascal. Yes, absolutely. Okay. I don't know now. Now I'm... Let's see. Let's... I don't know. I might leave the top like that. I think the bottom is fine like that. There's something kind of nice about a little bit of difference. Interesting. So then we have Lori says, I like the more solid color. It makes her feel stronger to me. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You know, it's interesting how just a little bit more color can actually change the way that we feel, not only about the artwork, but about, let's say, if there's a person, maybe it gives them more agency, makes them feel stronger. I'm gonna keep that like that. Because I think as it dries, it's gonna become even more transparent. Even these areas down here. So something up here, will that look weirder or better in its current state? I do feel like, what if I'd kind of just want to do almost like this is a shadow on the bottom side of her arm here. And that's a highlight. That's almost like, I'll do the same thing on the face. I'm gonna do that right here. Wow, time is gone. This is I didn't think today's episode would be so long. I think I'm gonna, I gotta put that aside before I keep on working on it ad nauseum. Okay, so got this. It's still a little wet around the edges. Well, if that's still wet, I gotta blow dry it. I do want to glue this down. So let's blow dry this really quickly. Oops, let's mute. Okay, so we're at that point now. We're going to do our finishing touches. We're going to start gluing some of the shapes to the board here. We're going to let that dry so we won't have a final reveal of it, but let's just see how everything looks at this point. I wonder where should we begin. Let's just put them all, we'll lay them all out here because I want to see it together. Let's side by side there. Huh, that's strange. Maybe this need to be moved up. Not sure how that happened. I guess I did make that border a little bit smaller, but that's very weird. Because that should be... don't fit together quite as nicely as... Anyway, that's okay. It's okay if we have a little bit of a gap down here. Gonna go there. That foot. Not there. That's a big break. That's kind of where they should be. Maybe this is just really long. Did I not clip? Ah, okay, that makes sense. I was like, well, what's going on here? Okay, so I'm going to glue that down. It might be just kind of nice. We'll just, I think we'll do our comparison here. Let's see how that looks. So I'm going to glue one part down at a time. I think I'm going to start with this bottom. I wonder, can I get away with... The thing is once I get some of this matte medium on this thing is going to start really warping quite a lot. So I might do just this part, put that down. Okay, so let's move that to the side. Let's get some paper here. Matte medium. I'm going to just use this in lieu of, instead of glue. Matte medium, again, is just paint without any pigment. It's transparent, and we can use it as a glue, because basically it is glue, right? It's not exactly the same as white glue, but there's a lot of chemicals that are the same in both right? And again, if you think of what the whole purpose of medium is, you put medium and then you put pigment in it, and it glues the pigment together as well as glues it to a surface like a canvas or a piece of paper or glass or plastic or whatever, right? So I want to make sure I've got a piece of paper that's clean. And let's do this side here. I'll get some wax paper out. Again, I can't remember if this is wax paper or parchment paper, but it does the job. The one thing I do want to I'm going to put a little bit of paper down so that I don't I want to try to avoid getting I know sometimes the wax paper seems to leave a little bit of residue. Long story short. Okay, let me get a book that I can put down over top of this. Photorealism since 1980. Okay. Already on your marks. Get set. Matte medium. And try to avoid as much as possible getting it onto the other side. If I do get some on the other side, there are solutions for that. I am thinking about maybe doing another short episode. I'm not sure when I'll do that. Maybe tomorrow, just to kind of show how the other one turned out as well. Maybe a little wrap up on Matisse week. Okay, you got to do this kind of quickly because that matte medium dries quickly. So I'm going to try to keep these horizontal. And that looks pretty good. A little bit of my fingers on there. Should I do this? I'm going to do that afterwards, even if I have to cut it a little bit. Let's move these fellas out of the way. Oh, you got a little butt, little strip show there with my butt coming out of my pants. Woo! Okay. So, that probably means this one's going to be done, because it'll be harder to... Well, it's not too hard to paint this way. The signature... I think I'll do that with a bunch of them together. So let's just... we'll do our... comparison here. Okay. Pascal says, does it mean we could use glue as a medium? You could use glue. The one thing with glue, I often find it's actually quite shiny. It doesn't quite self-level the same way that the medium does. It might be bad for your brushes. You could use matte medium or glue. You know, if you wash your brush within a reasonable amount of time, you should be able to get the glue out of it. And Paula wants more episodes tomorrow if my family agrees. Okay. Okay, everyone. So now we're going to talk about, we're just going to take a look at the paintings side by side and see how they turned out. As always, if you want to help support the show, there's a few different ways you can do that. Hit the notification bell. Upload your version of today's painting to the Facebook group. I would love to see what you've created. If you want to leave a small donation, there's multiple ways you can do that. The PayPal, send an e-transfer, just contact me through the Facebook group. Okay, so let's see these two side by side. The other one is going to take a little bit of time to dry. And now that that's had just a few minutes to get, it's now, you know, it's not wet to the touch anymore. A little bit of a little ridge there. I don't know, I think it actually works kind of well. We see that the paper is kind of worn here, so in a weird way, like, I don't know what happened in his studio, if this was like why there's this, it looks like there was something on here that kind of rubbed some of the paint away. So mine, you know, with that little bit of semi-transparency, oddly enough, it kind of works, I think. Okay. The color that I did in the background is maybe a little bit more on the peachy side. Now that I see it, I think they could have used a little bit more blue, and it could have gone a little bit more onto a green-brown. But I think what's one of the reasons maybe why that happened is also because I painted on the warm yellow. So I think that's part of the warm yellow coming through and mixing optically with our eyes. So, because I don't, you know, if we look at the paint on its own here, it's not quite as warm as that. So again, that's just shows you the effect of the Imprimatura on the painting, on the subsequent layers of paint. Lolly says, I'm here. I'm not painting, though. I'm just quietly falling asleep listening to Michael's soothing voice. That's great. I'm glad that I'm helping you to fall asleep, Lolly. I know you mean it in the best way. Just okay, everyone. Thank you so much for watching today and painting along with me. I can't wait to see what you've created. You know, it's a little bit of it's frustrating that I'm doing the gluing in little steps by steps, but that's the most prudent way, right? If you're not in a hurry, there's no reason to try to do it all at once and get real sweaty, and then you know, it's not gonna probably line up as well as if we just let it sit there and dry, do one little piece at a time. We're gonna get much better results, right? So that's what we want, right? Unless you're in a hurry, right? You can't, what is the analogy? You can have high quality but not fast, or you can have, or it's going to be really, I can't remember, this would be more expensive, and anyway, you know the analogy. Okay, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening, your weekend, wherever you are on our beautiful planet Earth. And we'll see you guys again very, very soon. Hit the notification bell so you find out maybe when the next bonus episode is coming up. We'll talk to you guys again very soon. Okay, good night, everybody.